Welcome to the Doug and Mike Show. I am Mike.
And I'm Doug. And we have real conversations with real people. Mike, why don't you tell us who we're going to interview today?
We have a special interview today with a firefighter, a fire lieutenant that is down in the Miami area in Coral Gables. David Perez, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, we're excited because we get to tell your story, and that's what we do on the show is highlight interesting folks and people that are out there making a difference, and you're certainly one of those guys. So David, give us a snapshot of your life, kind of starting on where you were born and raised, and take us through to where you are today.
Sure thing, Mike. Just to tell everyone a little bit about myself and my background, I'm currently 48 years old. I was born in New Jersey, in Union City, New Jersey, of Cuban descent. My parents left Cuba in 1959 and ended up in New Jersey. But after a few years of living in New Jersey and having enough of the snow and harsh winters in 1979, they decided to move down to the Miami area to a city called Hialeah, and we've been here ever since. So pretty much I went through grade school in the city of Hialeah public schools, on to middle school, and then high school as well.
Hold on a second, David.
Yes.
You're talking to a Hialeah boy here. High graduate. Which high school did you go to?
I graduated I'm from Hialeah, Miami Lakes Senior High.
Okay, well,
all right.
We're not going to hold that against you, but go ahead.
So I guess you are a T-bred.
I am a T-bred.
Okay.
What is that? Maybe we shouldn't ask.
Yeah, no, that was the other major high school that has a huge sports rivalry with with HML, Hialeah, Miami Lakes. But funny you mentioned that. You know, I did play high school football, went on to play college football for Heidelberg University in the state of Ohio. So I graduated after 4 years. I got my bachelor's degree and decided to come back to the Miami area, back to the city of Hialeah, and initially started working, started my professional career at that point. My first job out of college was working for Miami-Dade County for a program called the Summer Youth Employment and Training Program, where the county would put high school students to work, kind of introduced them into the job market, gave them a sense of responsibility, showed them, what it is to enter the job force, being on time, and being in an office atmosphere. So for me, my job was to make sure those kids were showing up to work, signing in and out properly from the job site logs, and that everything was in order. After that, I started working for a very popular local organization called the Latin Chamber of Commerce, Camacol, right in the heart of Miami in Little Havana. And I was responsible for some neighborhood improvement programs dealing with CDBG funds, community development block grant funds. Did that for a few years. And after that, in 1995, I started working for a then local elected official, a county commissioner by the name of Alex Pinellas, who ultimately became the county's first mayor in 96. He served 2 terms, total of 8 years. I was with him through his mayoral terms and moved up through different positions within the mayor's office, ultimately becoming his communications director in the office. And then afterwards, stuck around with the county for a few more years, ended up working for the Intergovernmental Affairs Office, essentially lobbying for Miami-Dade County in Tallahassee, covering subjects all the way from literally the airport to the zoo and everything in between. And then finished up my county career working at the Emergency Management Office, dealing with hurricane preparedness, emergency management plans, and so on. And then in 2011, I started to take a look around what was happening as far as local government, with stock markets crashing, real estate markets crashing. And it was just a bit of an eye-opener for me. It was a wake-up call whether or not I wanted to continue in that particular aspect of government service. And I kind of had an awakening and tried to figure out where could I really make a difference in life? Where can I actually touch people and make a difference? And that was when I decided to become a firefighter. I think there's no other profession where you can actually say that you saved someone's life. So in 2011, I became a Coral Gables firefighter after putting myself through fire academy, EMT, and paramedic school as well. I did that while I was still a full-time employee with Miami-Dade County. And as I said, in 2011, Coral Gables was the first city to give me an opportunity to join the fire service. And I did that. And currently I serve as a lieutenant in the fire department. So that kind of brings you up to speed where I'm at professionally in my career.
Man, what a journey. from Haiti to New Jersey to playing football, summer youth programs, you're working, lobbying on behalf of, important issues back home and working for electeds and then putting white stuff on red stuff and helping people as a firefighter, man. You are, you got a few different dimensions there.
Yeah, I've done, a broad spectrum of things, but very happy where I'm at right now. As we all say, it's the best job in the world.
So, David, let me ask you a question. When you were involved as a non-firefighter, but heavily involved in lobbying and stuff like that, what was your relationship with firefighters then?
Well, it's interesting. During my emergency management phase, my office, or the Office of Emergency Management, was at the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Headquarters. So I was surrounded by firefighters, basically for a number of years. And, that's actually what kind of pushed me towards the fire service as well. I saw the relationship amongst the firefighters, the camaraderie, and getting to know a few of the guys and girls. They've kind of urged me to seriously consider the profession. Again, having heard it was the best job in the world, I started looking down that path. And as a matter of fact, I had a mentor through the process. He was a division chief at the time, a gentleman by the name of Bob Palestrant, who is now actually with Broward Sheriff's Office Fire Department over at the airport. He was one of the guys who really guided me through the process, mentored me, and got me to where I'm at today.
Small world, I know him. Too funny.
Guy.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, for our listeners out there that aren't real familiar with Florida politics, you're running for Senate, correct?
Yes, sir. Running for Senate District 36 out of the Miami area.
Okay, so can you kind of explain exactly what a senator might do versus a representative and such?
Sure. Kind of just like a very quick civics lesson. So there are 40 members in the Florida Senate. Ultimately, I would be one of those 40 members. There's 120 members in the Florida House. And obviously, each and every year they meet to set the state budget and pass legislative bills. In order for anything to pass, both sides of that house, the Florida Senate and the Florida House, need to come to agreement on whatever it is, either a bill that affects Florida laws or the budget itself. Once those bills come into agreement, then they're passed on to the governor for his or her signature, and at that point, it becomes law. Obviously, it's a very, very important position in the grand scheme of things in the state of Florida, and ultimately affects what each and every person does every day, not only in the fire service.
Now, are there any firefighters that are currently in the legislature?
There is actually a Palm Beach County Fire Rescue captain that currently serves in the Florida House. He is the only active member at this point that is still on the front line. We do have some retired members who are seeking office. There's a gentleman by the name of Joe Casello out of the Boynton Beach area who is retired firefighter, I want to say from the New York area, I believe.
Worcester, Mass.
Okay, thank you. And then we also have Ed Hooper, who is a currently term limited Florida House member, who is also seeking office in the Florida Senate. But as I said, he is also retired. So there is a mix. We do have active and retired. But if this does pan out for us, I would be the first Florida Senate.
So adding to that, what happens at that level, I mean, why is it important that we have a voice in the legislature? I mean, what things happen at that level that affect a firefighter?
I could tell you probably the best example I could give you right now is the cancer coverage or cancer presumption bill we've been trying to get year after year. We're now going into our fourth year when this new legislative session starts. And essentially, it's, a bill that would affect each of our brothers and sisters who are dealing or would deal with cancer in the fire service. We're learning more and more every day about this horrible subject, about this horrible disease and how it affects us. And the numbers are quite staggering, to be quite honest with you. We're seeing all these kind of strange types of cancers that are usually dealt with later on in life. But yet here we are, we're dealing with those in the fire service with guys and gals, in the prime of their lives, under the age of 30, mid-20s. Some of them, we all unfortunately have our stories, our tragic stories of losing our fellow brothers and sisters. I can tell you down here in Miami, obviously, we're no exception to that. We lost a brother, Ralph Garcia, from the city of Miami a few years ago, 28 years old, died of brain cancer, in the prime of his life. And unfortunately, he's one of those statistics. We also lost Julius Perez from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, 41 years old, also died of cancer. And even us here in the city of Coral Gables, we had a brother pass by the name of Tim Walsh, died of multiple myeloma with only a few years of service in the department. And these are all, again, stories that unfortunately we all have, no matter what fire department we are from. None of us are immune to it. But that's probably the best example I could give you on a subject matter, on something that could and would affect us if we were to get it done in Tallahassee.
Yeah, I don't think that our guys recognize how many things are covered. I remember a mentor of mine, Charlie Hall, he used to always say, and I think this was kind of the example they would use with some of Jeff Carnes and all the ones from that era, but they would always tell us coming up that, look, every single aspect of your job, from the uniform you wear to the fire truck that you ride to your schedule, is decided by an elected official, either directly or indirectly through, their decision or a decision of an appointed person like a fire chief or an administrator. So just to tackle or add on to that, to the cancer issue, there are so many things at the state level, to include local retirement plans that are administered and changed and updated, and those things impact us at so many different levels. So that's a great example, though.
No, listen, you're absolutely right. And that's the first one that comes to mind. This past legislative session, we were fortunate enough to get our PTSD issue passed. And that's certainly something, again, that the fire service as a whole is dealing with. That was something that we had been after for a few years. But again, another example, true to life example on how the Florida Legislature and what happens in Tallahassee affects us. And you're absolutely right. Aside from the two subjects that I just mentioned, you have pension and retirement issues, and we can continue on down the line. But you're absolutely right, Mike. There's a whole host of issues that are dealt in Tallahassee and that we all need to be aware of. And it's important to have our voice at the table. Having an active firefighter and retired firefighters be part of that process can only help us in the long run.
Absolutely.
Well, I know you're not one-dimensional, David. I've seen some of your posts. I know you're getting active now on Instagram, and you're at a teachers event supporting teachers. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So sure. I gave you guys essentially the professional side of my life. Let me talk to you about the non-work related stuff that I do in the community. Aside from being a firefighter, I serve on my executive board on my local, IFF Local 1210. I currently serve as a trustee. In the past, I've served as vice president, but I also have served as the president of the South Florida Council of Firefighters, which is our umbrella organization that represents the more than 3,000 firefighters in Miami-Dade County and Monroe County. And again, currently, I also serve as a district vice president for our statewide organization, the Florida Professional Firefighters, representing, again, the same area, Miami-Dade County and Monroe. Aside from that, I've been a PTA president at one of the local elementaries here for the last 6 years. That all started when my son was at that elementary. My son is now 12 years old and in middle school, and I still serve as the PTA president for that elementary. But I'm very happy of the great work we've done. In those 6 years, we've raised probably about $200,000 for the school. And we've been able to do some great things at that school, giving them the resources that they need to help, teach our children at that level. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more than just being a firefighter for me. I've been a part of my community for the last several years, and I'm happy of the work that I've been able to accomplish because of that.
Dave, what are some of the things that you really would like to tackle when you get in there? What are the key issues for you?
I talked a little bit about that earlier with the whole cancer coverage, cancer presumption issue for the fire service. Again, being a district vice president for our state organization, one of my responsibilities is to be up in Tallahassee during the legislative session and speak on behalf of our members and follow our issues through the process. And, quite honestly, last year, I was sitting in a committee, and I think Doug was there with me, because if I remember correctly, I think Doug was sitting next to me or right in front of me. But I thought it was disgraceful that when our bill came up, we were given 1 minute and 1 minute only to present our bill and talk about, why we were seeking this change through the Florida Legislature. And I was also there when, we had organizations like the Florida League of Cities come up and just testify against the bill by basically saying that it was too expensive, and they opposed the bill for that reason. I mean, honestly, that enraged me when I could point to real life examples, as I stated earlier, to Ralph Garcia, to Julius Perez, to Tim Walsh. I mean, that really hurt me personally. And I thought to myself at that very moment, if I can make a change, if I could go beyond what I'm doing now, then I certainly would. That's certainly one example. And then, to kind of get on the soapbox here on the campaign speech, what happened last year with teachers and arming teachers, I think is a disgrace, to be quite honest with you. Again, having been somebody that has sat at a table, at a negotiation table, defending a collective bargaining agreement and knowing a little bit about the negotiations and what it means to bargain, I thought the fact that the Florida Legislature basically armed teachers and then didn't compensate them, that wasn't negotiated at any point through that process. They essentially changed the teachers' work environment. They changed their work responsibilities, okay? And they're not going to pay them any kind of high-risk pay or special risk pay or line-of-duty death benefits. So to me, again, as somebody who believes in labor, who believes in a collective bargaining agreement, what they did was a travesty to labor as a whole. Aside from that point, again, having a son in middle school in the public school system, to have him potentially be in a classroom with a gun, I cannot stand for that. And again, if I can make that one single change, then absolutely I will step up to the plate and I will make that difference. And those are just two examples that come to mind.
Those issues obviously are front and center right now when you're out with the public. Are those issues that you're hearing about when you're meeting with people in your district?
Absolutely. The biggest issue that comes out, again, is that whole common sense guns, not being in the classroom. I keep hearing that over and over. Another issue that I also hear is affordable health care. We see it each and every day being firefighters. What happens to individuals? What happens to local hospitals when folks do not have the proper health insurance? Our emergency rooms become primary care centers. They become overburdened, and ultimately we end up paying for that through uninsured costs, through indigent care. So the whole common sense gun approach, guns in the classroom, affordable health care, those issues keep coming up more and more as I talk to more people in the district.
So what's going to make you a different legislator than your typical legislators, David?
The fact that I serve as a firefighter, I think, is a big difference between me and, quite frankly, any other politician. I think there's more interaction. Unfortunately, we get to see people at their worst of their times. We don't have the luxury of sitting in an office and working 9 to 5s and having a regular work schedule. I think we're at a better advantage and dealing with folks and having a pulse of the community because of what we do. And then also because of, my community service, again, having been involved at the local PTA and other organizations, I think I've got a good grasp on what's needed for this district.
So let's get folks pointed your direction. So I guess number one, we'll have folks listening to this from all over the place, but the voters that will elect you will come just from that district, correct?
Correct, yes. It's Senate District 36. For individuals that may not be familiar with the district or the Miami area, I'll just give you what the district is made of. So to the south, it starts with a city called Miami Springs, which runs just along the northern border of Miami International Airport. It's actually across the street from Miami International. Then we continue north to the city of Hialeah, one of the largest cities in Miami-Dade County. It's actually the third largest city. We continue north to an area called Miami Lakes. Then we run all the way up to the county line, to the Broward County line. Then we jog a little bit to the west to an unincorporated area called Palm Springs North, or PSN. Then we travel back down south to a city called the City of Doral. And then we also consume some cities within that inner circle of Virginia Gardens, Hialeah Gardens, and Medley as well. So to give you an idea, the district basically has roughly about 250,000 voters, and it's split almost exactly in thirds with roughly, give or take, 80,000 Democrats, 80,000 Republicans, and 80,000 independents.
Wow, that's a pretty sizable amount.
Yeah, and again, those are registered voters. And then, when you start looking back into the district and past voter history and turnouts, in 2016, then candidate Clinton won the district by more than 13 points. Before that, in the 2012 presidential election, President Obama won the district by more than 4 points. And that Senate race in 2012, Senator Nelson also won that district by 8 points as well. So the signs are encouraging. The district is leaning more and more blue. And that's why I'm encouraged. And I think that this is certainly doable in this present state of politics.
Well, I know that, luckily it's an open seat, so technically you're not running against an incumbent, but let's face it, you are running against a very established House member that was, in a pretty powerful position. And how do you think you're going to, how are you going to compete with that?
Looking back on the past performance of the district, the fact that it is voting more and more blue, I think obviously helps us. When you look at what's happening nationally with all the issues that are being discussed currently, I think it puts the Democrats at an advantage. I think if you also look at some recent elections that we had down here, whether you believe in a blue wave or not, I think it's something that certainly needs to be considered. We had a special election at our county commission level where a no-name first-time candidate Democrat won her special election with basically no money. You look back a little further, we had another special election for House District 114. The Democrat ended up winning that race against a very favored and very well-funded Republican. And then, before that, you look at another Senate race, Senate District 40, where Annette Tadeo was the underdog, the Democrat in the race against a very, very well-funded Republican, former House member. Annette ends up winning that seat as well. So again, whether or not you believe there is a blue wave happening, again, based on very recent elections in this area, you certainly need to take that into consideration. It's evident something is happening down.
Well, what's gonna, let's pretend I'm an independent. How do you win me over?
Well, I think you got to point to the differences between me and my opponent. And I got to tell you, the more and more we learn about the Republican in this race, the more I become encouraged that I will certainly win this race. The Republican in this race, after 4 days of taking office as a House member declared financial bankruptcy. And then shortly after that, the gentleman receives a six-figure salary from one of the largest charter school companies in the state of Florida, Academia. And then again, by pure coincidence, he then becomes the education chair in the Florida House and starts proposing and passing legislation to favor charter schools.
Let me ask you a question, David. Is there a place for charter schools?
There certainly is a place for charter schools, but remember, the charter schools started under the principle of we can do more with less. We can certainly do a better job than the public schools. We want to offer an alternative to public schools. And they started down that route. But now it's gotten to the point where charter schools want the same money, the same public funding as charter schools, to the point where now they want charter schools are after the same building funds as public schools. And that's a problem. Again, it was supposed to start as, we can do more with less. We'll offer an alternative to the public schools. But now they want access to the same exact funds as our public schools, putting our public schools at a further disadvantage.
Dave, how can people get plugged into the campaign, and what kind of help do you need?
Well, we're on the World Wide Web, as the kids say. Our website is davidperezforsenate.com. You can certainly make online donations, and you can also submit information to volunteer as well if you're interested in being a part of our campaign. We're also on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram as well, and Twitter under David Perez FL, David Perez, Florida. And that's the way you can find us. Send me any kind of comments, any kind of suggestions, give us feedback. We'd be happy to hear that.
One thing that I wanted you to talk about before we wrapped up was if there are firefighters that are out there who are considering running for a local council, maybe county commission, maybe a fire control district, even at the state level, what kind of words of encouragement would you give them?
I would certainly tell them to do it. I know it seems like a huge obstacle, but the only way we're going to make a difference in our community on our issues is by getting our members to that dais, getting our members into elected office. We have a very, very strong brotherhood. And trust me when I tell you, when you take that step to run for public office, the full strength of our International Association of Firefighters will be behind you, from our DC office to our state office to our local units. I encourage each and every one of our firefighters to seriously consider running for public office. It's the only way we're going to make a difference.
How do you answer the question about being bipartisan and being able to have a conversation with people on the other side of the aisle?
I think it's important. It's the only way. It is the only way we're going to get things done. I kind of tell my guys and gals here at the Coral Gables IFF Local 1210, we will never get everything that we want. There will never be a time where you get 100% of what you want. It doesn't happen in the collective bargaining process. It doesn't happen in government. It doesn't happen in our own homes. Your wife or your significant other, your spouse, will never give you 100% of what you want. It's a give and take at every level. So government is no different. We have to be willing to work with each other. We have to be willing to work through the process. If not, it is just going to continue to be a stalemate. And at the end of the day, we're going to be right where we started from.
Dave, man, thanks for taking time out of your day to be with us today. I know you're busy. You're out there not only knocking doors and spreading the good word there about your campaign, but you're also protecting and serving as a firefighter, fire lieutenant still with Coral Gables. So thanks for coming on and talking about your campaign. Wish you the best of luck. And we really appreciate the willingness for you to step out there, for you and the family stepping out there and putting your name in the hat here. We feel like you got what it takes.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate the time. A great time being on the show.
Well, I hope that you continue to post on Instagram. And I know that just in a short amount of time, you're already over 50 followers. We need to get that number up and get you the exposure. So keep up the good work, David.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And we will see you next time on the Doug and Mike Show.